If you've ever been in the market for a new home, you know home shopping can be a lot. There's so much you don't know and so much you need to know. What are the neighborhoods like? What are the schools like? Who is the agent who knows the listing or neighborhood best? And why can't all this information just be in one place?
Well, now it is on Homes.com. They've got everything you need to know about the listing itself, but even better, they've got comprehensive neighborhood guides and detailed reports about local schools. And their agent directory helps you see the agent's current listings and sales history. Homes.com collaboration tools make it easier than ever to share all this information with your family. It's a whole cul-de-sac of home shopping information all at your fingertips. Homes.com. We've done your homework. You've heard us talk about Great Jones and their stunning high-quality cookware. Well, I have to say, since I got my Saucy, I have found it much more fun to cook. The Saucy is a terrific saucepan with curved sides, a pouring spout. It comes with a lid. It looks gorgeous just sitting there. It makes it easier and more fun to cook. And I realized that that's the exact intention of Great Jones. As a women-run New York-based brand, Great Jones wants to equip and empower people to cook at home and make kitchen our happy place.
So whether you're baking sourdough, cooking scrambled eggs, or looking to transform your kitchen into your happy place at a great price, we can agree that it's time to upgrade from those old rusted hand-me-downs to the bold, beautiful, long-lasting pieces from Great Jones like we did. Get started today at greatjones.com and get an extra 15% off your first order with promo code HAPPIER. That's greatjones.com, promo code HAPPIER.
Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about how to be happier. This week is a Happier Podcast Book Club episode. We'll be talking to the brilliant and beloved author Anne Lamott about her new #1 New York Times bestseller, Somehow, Thoughts on Love, and about her other work too. I'm Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies happiness, good habits, the 5 senses, human nature. I am in my little home office here in New York City, and joining me today from LA is my sister Elizabeth Kraft. And Elizabeth, it always makes us happier to read a book.
Yes, it does. That's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. And Gretchen, I am a huge fan of Anne Lamott. So excited we're talking to her today.
Before we jump in, just a quick reminder, send in those Ask Us Anything questions, plus hacks related to exercise, travel, or hiking. We want those hacks.
Yes.
And now for a book club episode. About 5 years ago, we launched our Happier Podcast Book Club, and today we will be talking about the book Somehow, Thoughts on Love, a collection of essays by Anne Lamott. Anne Lamott is an American author who writes both fiction and nonfiction, which is mostly autobiographical. Her work manages to hit transcendent themes and also to be hilariously funny. I have to include one of my recent favorite things that I read from Anne Lamott. She writes, "You can't run alongside your grown children with sunscreen and chapstick on their hero's journey," which I think is hilarious. That comes from her essay, 12 Truths I Learned from Writing to Life.
Hilarious. She's the author of many New York Times bestsellers. Her nonfiction works include books such as Dusk, Night, Dawn, Help, Thanks, Wow, Grace, Eventually, Plan B, Traveling Mercies, and Operating Instructions, as well as Bird by Bird, some instructions on writing and life. She's also written 7 novels, including the trilogy composed of Imperfect Birds, Rosie, and Crooked Little Heart. Anne was awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship and inducted into the California Hall of Fame. And that's a tough state, Gretch, to get inducted into a Hall of Fame. A lot of famous people.
I think so. Here's the description of Somehow, Thoughts on Love, which is her 20th book, which, as we mentioned, was a #1 New York Times bestseller. Love is our only hope, Anne Lamott writes in this perceptive new book. It is not always the easiest choice, but it is always the right one, the noble path, the way home to safety, no matter how bleak the future looks. In Somehow, Thoughts on Love, Lamott explores the transformative power that love has in our lives, how it surprises us, forces us to confront uncomfortable truths, reminds us of our humanity, and guides us forward. Love just won't be pinned down, she says. It is in our very atmosphere and lies at the heart of who we are. We are, Lamott says, creatures of love. In each chapter of Somehow, Lamott refracts all the colors of the spectrum. She explores the unexpected love for a partner later in life, the bruised and bruising love for a child who disappoints, even frightens, the sustaining love among a group of sinners for a community in transition in the wider world. The lessons she underscores are that love enlightens as it educates, comforts as it energizes, sustains as it surprises.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, one of my secrets of adulthood for writing is a strong voice repels as well as attracts. I think Anne Lamott is a strong voice. She has such a distinctive style. I think that she's one of these authors where if you handed me 2 sentences from any of her books, I would recognize that it's her. She's so distinctive.
Yes.
Welcome, Annie. Hello.
Hi, Annie.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, Liz.
We love the book, of course. We are giant raving fans of your work. But to give listeners a sense of it, would you read a passage from it to give them a taste of what's to come?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Well, I think I'll read from the very end, the coda that's called Glimmers.
Yes.
I have quoted my own version of a William Blake line for so long now that I like to think it's mine. We are here to learn to endure the beams of love. I have lived by these words for nearly 50 years, ever since I first read the quote. It is a sentence I want my family to remember when I'm gone. Also, I hope they forget that someone else said it and that I get the credit. This is a radical idea, absolutely contrary to everything I was raised to believe. I was taught to strive, to feel ashamed, to keep the family secrets, to believe I was better than, yet always in danger of lagging behind. I was taught to judge and surpass, and above all, to showcase a shiny surface of confidence, individualism, and self-sufficiency. We were not a playful family. We were amused. I was taught to observe other people's mediocrity and general ruin and to make quiet and arch comments about it. What Blake is saying is that none of those things are who I am or why I am here. But without them, who on earth am I? Still a student? Aging? Set in her ways? Moi? And to bear the beams of love, what a nightmare. No thanks. The cold, vibrating spaces inside us protect us and keep us on our toes. Love breaks your heart, and love makes you soft. It gets in past your Brooks Brothers armor and makes your skin as permeable as the little green frog my friend Caroline found in her shower. If you practice enduring people's bewildering love for you, it will change you molecularly. It loosens you, goosens you, warms you. Bearing the beams of love can dislodge ancient sachets of joy, pain, shame, and pride trapped inside you and make you smell strange and funny like soup. So maybe don't. You are not stupid. Love can leave bruises on the heart, an oceanic ache. When you give someone your best love, you too are filled with warmth. The world can be so lame, disappointing, and even mean, like an alcoholic father towering over us. But we can't give up on love batting last, or we are truly doomed. As Carl Sagan said, quote, "For small creatures such as we, the vastness is bearable only through love." I consulted my 6-year-old colleague to see if he could amplify his earlier statement that love is, well, this stuff. "Tell me more if you can," I said. "What is love?" He thought this over for a moment. "It's like, duh."
Oh, such a beautiful passage.
Thank you.
Yes, beautiful. Well, coming up, we will ask Annie some of our questions, and then later we will address questions from listeners. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. I now work with a team, and I am here to say that finding the right candidate and hiring the right candidate is one of the very biggest and most important challenges to anyone who has a small business.
LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Gretchen. That's linkedin.com/Gretchen to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The weather's getting warmer, so it's time to say goodbye to jackets and sweaters and hello to shorts and tees. Gretchen, I am always on the hunt for the perfect t-shirt, and I found it at Quince. So well priced, such good quality. I am in love with the slub crew neck tee. I have it in white. I'm getting it in black, possibly multiples. I love it so much.
The best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the costs of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. Get warm weather ready with Quince. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
We are back talking to Anne Lamott about her fantastic new book. Annie, why did you decide you wanted to write about love?
Well, it was kind of an accident. I really wanted to put together some essays and meditations for my son and grandson for when I'm gone on everything that has ever worked during really, really tough, weird periods of time, because the future they face is going to be rough. It just is, with climate change and the possible loss of democracy. Although I'm going to be fighting tooth and nail the second I hang up with you two today to make sure that doesn't happen. But anyway, I started writing these pieces about community love, about the love of nature, about service, about food pantries, about romantic love, about the unbelievable gift of close friendship, which is basically why I have any faith at all in God. And I wrote 3 of them, and they all had to do with love, that everything I know that has ever worked before and almost certainly will again ultimately has to do with love. And I thought, oh no, I don't want to write a book on love. That's even too California for me. And I've lived in California for all 70 years. And but then I thought, well, it seems to be what wants to be written. So I just pushed back my sleeves and pressed on.
So it started out as just a personal project that you were going to do for your family, and then it turned into your professional project.
Well, yes and no. As soon as I wrote a few pieces, I really liked them. And sort of, cognitively, I'm getting more and more amusing every day. But my writing mind seemed to be working fine. It was strange because I felt like I was able to, with these pieces, I was able to tune the radio dial in really closely to what I was aiming for. And you know what that's like, both of you,
yes.
that sometimes you can't get close. And I kept feeling, for some reason, I was getting really close to what I was after. And I knew that, this is what I do. I'm a writer. I'm unemployable. And I had a feeling early on it would turn into a book.
Well, okay. And on the subject of you as a writer, so you started as a novelist. Your very first book was a novel. You've written several novels. You've also written many books of nonfiction, and you wrote a book about writing. That's a very unusual range to have sort of a library like that. How do you think about what projects you want to do? And how do you feel about fiction versus nonfiction in your writing?
I've actually written 7 novels, and
Seven novels.
7 out of the 20 books I've written, yeah. And they're hard, they take several years, and you have terrible self-esteem the entire first year, and you wish you'd stayed in college and could actually do something. They're hard. It's 3 years, at least 4 years in a couple of cases, and you're having to keep so many plates spinning in the air, and characters are developing, which is not always convenient and whatnot. So I have to find a certain kind of stamina in my inside self before I can undertake a novel. I'm older now. I'm kind of old. And I'm not sure I'll have that stamina again. But I really listen to the inside person. I listen to what is tugging on my sleeve to see whether it's these little pieces. I think I've written like 9 of these collections of essays that are on life and faith and being human and families and, just the whole holy enchilada of being here.
Yeah.
And then I've written these 2 books that were journals, one on operating instructions, which was a journal, which I didn't actually set out to publish. I just wanted to not forget these moments and stories of my son's first year. And then my son and I wrote a book called Some Assembly Required, which was sort of a follow-up. And it was a journal of my son's first son, who's now almost 15. And so, but I just felt them intuitively that I should get all this stuff down on paper. And then there's a book on writing, so that, I don't know. I love the length of these little pieces, and I sort of feel like I found my niche, and I love the length. They're like 10 manuscript pages. They might be 3,000 words, and they're kind of manageable, I mean, they always end up being 1,000 words too long. Then I go back and I take out 1,000 words. And, I've been writing these pieces on being older for the Washington Post for 9 months now. I've sort of insulted that they asked me to write pages, but I thought I was only 60. I was 69 at the time, a young one. But I always write, and I'm sure this is true for both of you. You write a third again too long, more than a third at least, right? So for 1,100 words, which is the maximum I can write for the Washington Post, I write 1,900, right? And then I can get rid of 300, but then the other 1,500 are so precious. How could you even think of trying to get me to take out, and so on. But I think I really found my niche. I found my sweet spot with these pieces. I just think of them as my little pieces, and they often have to do with faith or family or just the nightmare of, say, that started 2016 or whatever. And so I let myself do what I love to do so much.
One of the things that I think is so remarkable about your work is that you do manage to talk about transcendent themes, you grapple with dark issues, and yet you are so funny. I think people don't talk enough about just how funny you are. I found myself just laughing out loud, even like you'll have an adverb just dropped in and I'll be like, oh, that adverb is so good. How do you think about humor? Is this just the natural way you express yourself? Do you like go through and sort of punch it up? Do you think about how to have a balance? Like you talk how you, I can't remember where, about how when you were younger, you got funny because people were picking on you or leaving you out. And so you found that this was a way to make friends and protect yourself. Yeah. How do you think about humor in your writing?
I actually got funny because boys bullied me because I had this very crazy hair. And I discovered that humor, that if I could think of a retort when a gang of boys on bikes or on the blacktop bullied me, if I could think of a way of a great line, it would really put that one boy down and kind of make him look like a bit of a fool in the eyes of his gang members, 6 years old or whatever. I mean, it started very early, and it was just awful. And over and over again, I also just had this gift. It's funny. I was thinking about when I got funny, and I remember when I was about 6 years old. So that's first grade. I was funny by first grade. I had migraines by kindergarten. And I just had a lot of stuff on me. And what saved me, my salvation, the way other people might talk about Jesus or Buddha, was chapter books, right? And I think you would probably both say the same thing, that I was a really early reader. And by 4 or so, I discovered that you could read a story. You could be immersed in these people, sometimes who were funny, like Beverly Cleary or, or Beatrix Potter, and then eventually E.B. White and Stuart Little and Charles Webb. And then you could wake up the next morning and they were still there. And the story continued. And I literally was saved by that. But I was also saved by trying out these funny little set pieces. Like when I was coming up, I'm a little older than you two. Mr. Clean was, there was a commercial for Mr. Clean.
Yes.
We had a black and white TV, and I could do the impersonation of the Mr. Clean commercial. And I remember my mom and dad and their friends were over. Of course, they were drinking, so it probably seemed funnier than it was. But I did Mr. Clean, and they just lost their minds, right? And so that became something that was a part of my value system, that when I could make people laugh. But I was never left out. I mean, my superpower was always friendship. It was always what I was best at and what I lived for. Yeah. Yeah. So in my work, back to the original question, it's funny because I don't usually put stuff in to make it funnier. I usually go through it and take stuff out because I'm trying too hard. Yeah.
I do that with quotations.
Yeah.
I put in so many quotations that I love.
Same.
And I have to do a pass where I take them out. Because,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and you often obviously write about your own life, and so other people's stories come into it.
Yeah.
And somehow you write about getting married for the first time, about challenges with your son and your neighbors. Now, one of the most often quoted passages from your work comes from Bird by Bird, Some Instructions on Writing and Life, where you write, "You own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better." This just makes us laugh.
Yeah.
How does that work in practice?
yeah.
Well, my son has a writing collective called awritingroom.com online. I think it's almost 600 writers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, helping each other and supporting each other. And we do a lot of prompts there. And some of them are mine. I'll give you some later if you remember. I won't. Yeah. A lot of the questions there are, how do I write about my family without being exiled? I was abused, or it was evil. Or how do I write about my ex-husband without slander and libel? And the easy answer is fiction. And in my experience, if you change people's hair color and height, they never, ever recognize themselves. And a number of times you can also, if there was stuff going on Flannery O'Connor famously said that if you survive childhood, you have enough material to write for the rest of your life. And that's what we talk about at awritingroom.com. You've got the material. Get some legal paper because it's longer and scribble down every single memory, beginning with the very first holidays are great prompts, because you might remember being 3 or 4 and have a kind of filmy, flickery memory of the Christmas tree or the Hanukkah candle, the menorah or whatever, and just get it all down, because every single thing in you is trying to get you to not write. And no one in your family is going to be happy to hear you're writing a memoir, right? And so, but everything's going to try to get you not to put it down on paper. So this idea of being exiled for your family or sued is one of the tools that it will use to silence you. And so I say, get a legal pad and scribble down page after page of memory and snippets, visions you had. I still remember a couple of dreams I had before I went to kindergarten. I don't always remember it. I never have my fly zipped up. I've been on stage with shoes that don't match, but I can remember some dreams from an early house that we moved out of when I was 4.5. And so get it all down, and we're going to worry about this later. And
write first.
Write for 2 years. And you get to also check, well, at a writing room, or actually any writing community you can find. You might find one at a community college. You do need a community. You can't do it alone. You need feedback, and you need support, and you need someone to say, I understand how anxious you are because your mother, this really is your mother. But what if you make it the mother of your best friend? What if the narrator is narrating the story of her best friend's family, and you change the hair color, you change the height, but the main thing is you just do the writing first, and we'll figure it out together later. Just don't think about it. It's just trying to keep you from writing.
Great advice.
Well, coming up, we will pose questions from listeners, but first, this break.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Gretch, this year has gone by so fast.
Yeah.
You and I love thinking about years as a whole. We love thinking about what we want to do in a year, what we want to accomplish. We love looking back on the year. Well, there is still time to have a lot happen in this year. And one thing that can really help when you're trying to tackle something big is therapy. I know that for me, anytime I've struggled or wanted to figure out something big, speaking to a therapist has made a huge difference.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time. Take a moment. Visit betterhelp.com/Gretchen Rubin today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gretchen Rubin. One thing that can be really frustrating as a parent is you see your child struggling with a specific subject. They need help with their homework, or maybe they're asking questions on their homework that, you as a parent do not feel equipped to answer. IXL Learning is an online learning program for kids. It covers math, language arts, science, and social studies. IXL is designed to help them really understand and master topics in a fun way with positive feedback. I remember how much Eleanor struggled with math, and I was not able to help her, and having IXL would have really, really benefited her.
If your child is struggling, this is the smartest investment you can make. IXL is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And happier listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/happier. Visit IXL.com/happier to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. As your kids get older, some things about parenting get easier. They can make their own snacks and make their bed and do their laundry. But others don't, like having that conversation about money. The fact is, kids won't really know how to manage their money until they're actually in charge of it. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families. Parents can send money to their kids and keep an eye on kids' spending and saving, while kids and teens build money confidence and lifelong financial literacy skills. Jack has Greenlight, Gretchen, and he loves it. If I had Greenlight when we were young and I knew if I mowed the lawn, mom and dad would put money on my account, I for sure would have mowed the lawn more happily.
Millions of parents and kids are learning about money on Greenlight. It's the easy, convenient way for parents to raise financially smart kids and families to navigate life together. Sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/happier. That's greenlight.com/happier to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/happier.
Okay, we are back and we have some questions from listeners. This comes from Emma. She said, tell us how Anne Lamott and Gretchen know one another.
Wait, Annie, can I jump in and answer this?
Yes.
Okay. So when I was in college, my roommate was Megan. And one of the things about Megan is she mentioned to me that she appeared as a character in a novel by Anne Lamott. And I will post in the show notes a picture of the cover of the book, Hard Laughter. And indeed, Megan is in that novel under her own name, Megan, and she is exactly the way she is in real life. I recognized her as a child character.
Yeah.
But this got me, so I really focused on Anne Lamott as a writer more because I had this connection to her. Well, flash forward, we were bridesmaids together when Megan got married.
Yep.
And we were there. And at that point, like, I did not know that I wanted to be a writer, but I so revered writers and I so loved the work of Anne Lamott that I was too scared to talk to her. You had baby Sam with you, and I was just too intimidated to say anything. I just kind of lurked around and stared at you from across the room. Then cut to several years later, and then our paths crossed as both writers. And so for me, you kind of represent this iconic figure that stood on the other side of the river from me, but that I managed to cross over myself. And so, and I'll post a picture of us as bridesmaids together. It's just very funny that we go all the way back in this quirky way. And I'm a fan of your work now. It's just, so that's how we sort of, I knew Annie before she knew me.
And then I got to come to your house about 6 or 7 years ago and do a podcast in your early days of your podcast.
Yes.
And although it was huge even then, and you know, I took a bunch of stuff when you went to the bathroom. I took I took an ashtray. Yeah.
I think we did an Instagram Live. I think your now husband, Neil, was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I met your son. We did a podcast recording with your son with his great podcast. Yeah. So now we've got all kinds of overlapping connections.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah. It's so fun.
Yeah. I love it. Didn't we do a symphony space together too?
Oh my gosh. So yes, we did a symphony space. And when the publicist said, oh, would you do like an In Conversation with Anne Lamott? I was like, this is something that I don't need to prepare for. I'm already prepared. Like I walk into this, I already know I have my favorite passages marked. I own all her books. You don't need to send me any of her books. So that was great. And Annie, I was just at the thing at Symphony Space that celebrated the publication of somehow your 20th book and your 70th birthday. So that was super fun.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You packed the house.
Yeah. That was wild. Yeah. But you and I packed the house too, I have to say.
We did. We had a really fun event that time too.
Oh, it's a great story.
Couple of old friends. I know. It's just like zero anxiety. You know, there's that 1 minute when you step out, or there's 5 minutes beforehand, and then you step out, and then you look at the face of an old friend, and you just start riffing, you know?
Oh, well, you know what, Annie, I actually remember there was a point where you were like, well, right before we started, you were like, well, what about this question about time? And I was like, that's my problem. You just be brilliant and charming. I will watch the clock. And you were like, okay.
Yeah, that works. Yeah,
that works.
Here's a question I love from Ronan. He says, what was the most challenging type of love for you to explore and write about in the book?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I could probably write about that. I think self-love. You know, I in the book, and somehow I write about finding Neil at the ripe old age of, and we got married 3 days after I started getting Social Security. He's a year and a half younger, and which comes up, you wouldn't believe how often in conversation. You know, I write a lot about family love, which can be so fraught and tangled and so blessed and so challenging. You know, some days with families are just too long, and the love of community, which for a person like me who's very introverted and shy and doesn't like to leave the house is really where I found salvation, another kind of salvation in which I absolutely resist it with every fiber of my being. But the self-love is like the last frontier. And it's so hard because, you know, Gabriel Garcia Marquez said, there's your public life, there's your private life, and there's your secret life. And you know, and in your secret life, you see just how kind of ruined you are, how ambitious. You see the striving, you see the extreme narcissism and the absolute self-obsession and the not really caring about all the stuff that you pretend to care about and all of it. And to do that deep dive into it and to just start to be really friendly and to say, first of all, I mean, the point of most of the pieces I write is that we're all pretty much the same. I'm not uniquely screwed up. Anything I've written about, I'm almost positive is universal. But to learn to love and forgive myself has been the hardest work I've ever had to do. And I really do think it's the final frontier that, you know, when my son now has 14 years clean and sober, but when he was out there, I didn't know if he would live. I didn't know if he'd survive his drug addiction. And I also didn't know what he might do, stoned and drunk. And I came to the understanding that no matter what he did, even if he killed someone, I would still have absolutely unconditional love for him. That is the sacred nature of love, that it's not transactional, right? And so I had to use that as the template for finding a deep friendliness and acceptance of my own mixed up self, just gorgeous, incredibly generous and spiritual and sweet and funny and deeply human and mixed up and scared, and graspy and clenched, and full of judgment. That's the main cross to bear, is just that endless judgment. And so that's the work I've done kind of on the page.
Trish asks, do your son and grandson read your manuscripts before they're published?
My son reads a lot of the pieces I write. I'm not positive he's read the books about him.
Yeah.
I dedicated somehow to Jax, and he was very, very pleased. I kind of stunned to see that, because it just says on the first page, for Jax. But no, I mean, Jax has read the parts of operating instructions. And I mean, anything that has Sam in it, I've shown to him since he was 10. I've always cleared everything with Sam since. But no, I think they mostly read the pieces that are about them. Yeah.
Like all of us,
Yeah.
most interested in ourselves.
Yeah.
And finally, Anne, Ari asks, how has your own writing process evolved over the decades since Bird by Bird?
Well, that's a really good question. And, I talk about that endlessly at writingroom.com, because I don't know much else besides what I wrote in Bird by Bird. And I did a 5-week Bird by Bird workshop where I, for the first time in my life, and in fact, Sam and his company recorded me reading Bird by Bird. It had never been in my voice before, and about 5 years ago.
Oh,
fun.
Yeah, it was wild, at his studio, because it had been read by an actress 30 years ago when it came out. And, I actually hadn't read it until I read it for Sam's studio. But for writingroom.com, I did a 5-week workshop where I took like 60 pages at a time and spent an hour and a half on them with the collective. And a lot of it, I don't want to sound self-aggrandizing, but I thought, that's really good. That's really true. And then, both of you, what it's like, some of it you go, oh, your heart sinks, and you go, oh, where was my editor, and I could do that better now. But I have to say, I don't have much to add to what I already tried, because it was originally called Every Single Thing I Know About Writing. Well, there is one thing. I did a workshop about a month ago at a writing room on writer's block. And in Bird by Bird, I did a few pages on how it's going to happen to every single writer, that you're going to run out of any good ideas. You're going to realize what a complete fraud you are and what a loser and this and that. And but I didn't really have techniques and tools. And I do. And I can't recreate it right now, but I had like 8 tools. Let me think of one of them if I can. You jump ahead. You go 20 pages ahead of where you've gotten stuck. Or I wish I had it in front of me, because they were really good. One was, I know you introduce a character just out of the blue, and you start to ask yourself the same kind of deep questions of your characters that the same questions you'd ask of somebody you were getting to know, of a possible friend. What are you most afraid of? What do you really, when all is said and done, what do you want? And then that will kind of unloosen. It's like a really tight, tangled skein of wool, and it's kind of, or pickup sticks, it's kind of somehow loosening the log jam. And so I actually think I could, if I did a revised Bird by Bird, I would do a long piece on writer's block, because that's why you need community. That's why you need to either go to a bookstore or a community college or next door and start one, that you need people to kind of midwife you, because it's, as you both know as well as anyone, it can be so hard, such tough going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, finally, we ask all our guests if you have a try this at home suggestion, something that listeners can do as just part of their ordinary days to be happier, healthier, more productive, more creative. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, my go-to suggestion is to just keep going outside, no matter what, no matter how busy and important you think you are, and to look up and to look around. My pastor said 30 years ago that you could trap bees in a mason jar without a lid on it, with a drop of honey on the bottom, because they don't look up. They just sort of walk around bitterly, bumping into the walls of the jar. And it's the same for us. And all to get out of ourselves, to get out of our clench and clutch and grasp and cling and judge, all we have to do is step outside and look up. You don't look outside and go, oh, I like stars. They're pretty. You look outside and you look up at the night sky and you go, wow. Or you go, holy cow. Or you step outside and, everything's in bloom all of a sudden. Or you take the beginning of the book of Somehow is something my husband said years and years ago, which is that you can see everything that is beautiful and true about life on any 10-minute walk in the city, in the country, outside your own door. You can see what is true and beautiful and what still works. So that would be my go-to change that you can make, is that as a habit, you get it, you take these breaks and you don't go to MSNBC or to Twitter, that you go outside and you look up and you look around. 5 minutes here, 3 minutes there, 10 minutes here.
Well, that is beautiful. Thank you so much. We've so enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Gretchen. I loved it today.
We'd love to hear your impressions and reflections on the work of Anne Lamott. Let us know on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook. Drop us an email at podcast@GretchenRubin.com. Or as always, you can go to the show notes. This is happiercast.com/487 for everything related to this episode. I will post photos of Anne Lamott and me as bridesmaids. Remember, whenever it is and wherever you are, there's always a book waiting for you.
And Gretch, what's the resource this week?
Okay, so excited to offer a massive merch sale for fans of the podcast. It is the biggest discount of the year. You can get up to 45% off on popular drinkware, organization tools, apparel related to the podcast. Elizabeth, you like the Onward and Upward t-shirt.
Yes.
I like my Happier mug and my Happier AirPod case. Go check it out at happiercast.com/merch, and the discounts will automatically be applied to everything on the page. Give yourself a treat. This sale ends on June 25th, 2024.
Great.
And that's it for this episode of Happier. Remember to try this at home. Read Somehow or some other book by Anne Lamott. Let us know what you thought.
Thank you to our wonderful guest, Anne Lamott. Thank you to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin. And I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft. Our email address is podcast@GretchenRubin.com.
And you know what I'm going to say. Please rate us. Please review us. Please recommend us to your friends. Here's your rhyming motto. If you're a fan of the show, make sure your friends know.
Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward.
Gretch, I love my mugs. I have a mug that says bird by bird that somebody had made because Anne's book, Bird by Bird, is such a huge inspiration. So I got my bird by bird mug.
You can drink from it as you're writing your thriller. It'll keep you going.
Yes.
From the Onward Project.
Start your summer road trip at Midas and get up to $30 off your next repair service. Plus, get a free closer look vehicle check to make sure you're road trip ready. So if you need a brake service, an alignment check, or tune-up, hit up Midas for up to $30 off. For more details, request your appointment at Midas.com.